I'll just keep reading, just pretend that this is fine. Podcast, episode 195, Tipiṭaka, part 123, in which, out of the blue, some noise starts coming right outside where it was completely silent just a few minutes ago. Great timing, guys. Sorry. In which also, in addition to that, I will continue reading Tipiṭaka, the Bhikkhunivibhaṅga, or Rules for Nuns. You can click there if you want to start at the beginning of the Rules for Nuns. These are the Pācittiya rules, and we will be starting today with Rule 61. If you would like to start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka recitals, which will introduce the Vinaya Piṭaka and then go into the rules for monks for 100 episodes or so, you can click right there. So I'm going to assume that whoever's watching or listening to this has heard the previous episode. That kind of brought up a lot of stuff that we talked about last year in the flashback where the thing I had kind of completely forgotten, the 8 important rules for nuns. Now, we haven't gotten into anything in the scriptures yet that explains this, but my understanding from how it's been explained to me by my teachers in the past is that originally when Lord Buddha started teaching, he was teaching monks, he was teaching men, and I think a relative of his, maybe even his aunt, depending on how you pronounce that, or someone related to him wanted to join and be a nun, and he refused, and then Ananda talked him into it, saying, hey, women are sentient beings too, you can help save more beings, and he was saying it's just a lot of problems come up that we can avoid if we just have it men only. It'd be much simpler. And eventually Ananda convinced him. But in order to, smoothly facilitate having an order of nuns as well as an order of monks, Lord Buddha instituted the 8 important rules, which were the ones that we talked about in the previous episode. Now, one thing that I found very sweet is when I was researching to figure out when it was that those rules were brought up so that I could go find which episode it was from last year and then get the clip of me reciting it last year in New Delhi with the honking horns outside. When I was doing that, I also read that many modern Theravadan orders, say that the 8 important rules were not the teachings of Lord Buddha because they're obviously very sexist, obviously placing nuns on a level below monks. And since Lord Buddha is enlightened, as we all know, then it couldn't have been Lord Buddha. He did not say that. They just erased that part because clearly it must have been added by some chauvinist later on. I love that. I mean, I don't think they're right, but it's sweet, and I understand where they're coming from. And I also, especially when I first read them last year, was struggling with that. And it kind of, took me a while to come to accept that, okay, as is stated at the beginning of the Vinaya Piṭaka, Lord Buddha wanted this order to last for a long time. And a lot of the concerns that come up in this very grounded, down-to-earth situation, historical recording of when, the man Siddhartha Gautama, who attained enlightenment and became known as Lord Buddha, the issues that would come up had to do with people talking. People would say, how can these monks behave this way? And he would say, okay, we can't have people saying, how can these monks behave this way? So he would gather everyone together, and in a very specific way, he would outline the new rule. He would define every word in the rule. And it seems very king-like. And of course, before he left, I think he was 29, if I'm not mistaken. So for a long time, he had witnessed the proceedings of a royal court. He had seen his father act as the judge in a lot of ancient situations. There wasn't a separate, like in modern representative democracies, you have the judicial, you have the judge is separate from the executive. But in ancient times, like in the case of Moses and Leviticus, he was the leader, but he was also the judge. So whenever there was an issue, they would come to him and he would determine what the rules should be. So, that would have been the case in his father's kingdom. And he had seen that done many times. And that seems to be how he approached this aspect of the original Sangha, the very down-to-earth part that we've been reading for the past year and a half or so. Anyway, I want to get to the reading today, so I won't talk too much longer. But the only other thing I wanted to mention was I often talk with my wife, as you know, that's my wife and I. I'm sure I found some clip to show you. I live here in India. Her family, all branches of her family are from what's presently called Bihar, which is the same area. Now it's a state, but back then it was the area in which most of, like 90% or more of these stories are taking place whenever it talks about Rajgir, Rajgaha, or the Banyan Monastery, or all of these different places, Savatthi and Kapilavatu, whatever, everything. These are, when she, tells me stories about, my grandparents on my mom's side were from this area, and on my dad's side were from this area, and I grew up here, and I went to school there. It's the same areas. A lot of them have different names now. But honestly, when we had our first date, almost 6 years ago now, I was impressed. I mean, I don't know. I have to admit, I was a little bit impressed to imagine that, because her family goes back really far in that region, and it's entirely likely that she has ancestors that would have, obviously monks and nuns didn't have children, but they may have been the brother or sister of her direct ancestors. So that's a trip to me. Being myself from a land where my ancestors, frankly, didn't belong, California. And my ancestors were among the first who looked like me to migrate to that area. But there was someone else there before, the Spanish and obviously the First Nations peoples. So I never had the feeling of having roots. Briefly, for a few years when I was a teenager, which was back in the 1990s, that dates me a little bit, I became very interested in the Celtic and Druidic traditions of ancient pre-Christian, pre-Romanized British Isles. And, found a little bit of a sense of roots there. But mostly I was drawn even back then to the teachings of Lord Buddha. But never even stopped to ponder what it might be like to actually feel rooted in that way, in an ancestral way, to Lord Buddha. And I feel that vicariously through her, right or wrong, it's probably wrong. I'm just sharing my path with you if you're interested. It's not really relevant to the teachings. I'll get to the teachings in a moment. But when I told her about this rule, whatever none should learn worldly knowledge, there is an offense of expiation. Yesterday, she said, of all the rules you've told me about, that one I hate the most. All these rules about nuns must be subservient to monks, nuns must not raise their voice to monks, nuns must always, bow to monks even if they've only been a monk for a day and she's been a nun for 100 years. Those are all bothersome, but that rule is the most bothersome. And I said, why? And she said, is there a rule that monks can't learn? And a light bulb went off in my head and I realized, no, there isn't. There's only a rule that nuns aren't allowed to learn secular things. They're only supposed to focus on the teachings of Lord Buddha, with the two exceptions of it's fine if they learn to read and write, and it's also fine if they learn to do a magic spell for protection, which is honestly something I wouldn't have expected to find in the pre-sectarian early Buddhist literature, but it's interesting, learning every day that I'm doing this. And so, yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up that I didn't catch, didn't put two and two together when I first read it, but now that she's pointed it out, yeah, that's also bothersome. So, I'm here to read it. I want to read it. I have great reverence and respect for Buddhism and Buddhist history, but I'm also not gonna, close my eyes and refuse to see things that are not good when I read them. And I can totally understand where the modern Theravadins are coming from in saying, this isn't Lord Buddha. It can't be. It couldn't be, because he's good and we love him. And, the idealized image of him is more real than this real man that became that idealized image. I mean, they don't say that part, I'm saying that part. And then I can also understand why in Mahayana and Vajrayana, they say, you know what, the Tipiṭaka is good, just skip the Vinaya Piṭaka, basically be a good person. It's common sense stuff. You don't need to read every rule, you can just kind of move on to the teachings. I understand where they're coming from as well in recommending that, because it would be certainly easy to get sidetracked and disappointed and kind of have a crisis of faith, if that applies here, in really sitting down and reading and thinking about every rule and going, why though? If he's enlightened, why is he making these rules in this way? And the answer is because it was 2,600 years ago. And, he came from a king lineage, and he also was concerned about what the neighbors are going to think. And the world wasn't ready for someone to come along and say, men and women are perfectly equal here. We make no distinctions, like some kind of Osho commune or something. And if that existed among the Shramana traditions of 6th century BC, then it would have been among the 61 or 62 sects that we know nothing about. And so there it is. I hope everyone's doing well. Just wanted to share some of that stuff and hopefully never talk about it again on this program. I'll go ahead and begin the reading for today. Expiation, Pācittiya 61. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. You might have noticed this microphone here is a little closer. You can see it now. I'm hoping that the audio quality of this one will be a bit better. Okay. Now at that time, nuns ordained a pregnant woman. Okay. She walked for alms. People spoke thus, quote, "Give alms food to the lady. The lady is heavy with child." And, quote, "The people, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, 'How can the nuns ordain a pregnant woman?'" And, quote, here's kind of an example of the people in the area are shocked that they ordained a pregnant woman. I personally see nothing wrong with ordaining a pregnant woman, and clearly the nuns who initiated her saw nothing wrong with it, but we're about to hear the establishing of a rule against becoming a nun when you're pregnant. Okay, I'll keep reading. "Nuns heard these people who, three dots, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, 'How can these nuns ordain a pregnant woman?' End quote. Three dots. On the other hand, as we were reminded yesterday in the 8 important rules, a nun must be a novice for 2 full years before she becomes fully ordained as a nun. And those of us who are just a little bit good at math can realize that if she's an ordained nun and she's pregnant, she must have become pregnant while she was a novice in the order of nuns. So, all right, I'll keep reading. Quote, "Is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns ordained a pregnant woman?" End quote. Quote, "It is true, Lord," end quote, the enlightened one. The Lord rebuked them, saying, quote, "How, monks, can nuns ordain a pregnant woman? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, end parentheses, pleased. Three dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should ordain a pregnant woman, there is an offense of expiation." End quote. One nice thing about it is that the rules of expiation are not big rules. There's the big rules, right? Don't become pregnant while being a nun is a big rule. That's one of the rules you get kicked out for. Don't falsely accuse your fellow nun about being guilty of a big rule. Don't lie about when you know she's guilty of a big rule. Don't pretend you don't know that. That's a big rule, a fairly big rule. I think it might be one of the big rules, actually. But here, a few tiers down, these 4th level rules like misdemeanor. So it's a misdemeanor to ordain a woman who's pregnant. And note that it's the nuns who ordained her that's that the rule is being established against, not the pregnant nun herself. And she's not being kicked out. He's just trying to decrease the amount of times that this happens. Okay, all right. Just pointing that out. Whatever means 3 dots, nun means 3 dots. Pregnant woman means she is called entered by beings. I'll just keep reading. Should ordain means should confer the upasampada ordination. If she thinks, quote, "I will ordain," parentheses, her, end parentheses, and looks about for a group, or for a woman teacher, or for a bowl, or for a robe, or if she determines a boundary, there is an offense of wrongdoing. As a result of the motion, there is an offense of wrongdoing. As a result of 2 proclamations, there are offenses of wrongdoing. At the end of the proclamations, there is an offense for the woman preceptor and an offense of wrongdoing for the group and for the woman teacher. If she thinks that she is pregnant when she is pregnant, parentheses, and in parentheses, ordains her, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt, 3 dots, offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that she is not pregnant when she is pregnant, parentheses, and parentheses, ordains her, there is no offense. I mean, that's reasonable, right? They didn't have pregnancy tests back then. So if she doesn't know, she's like, oh, it looks like she's got a little bit of maybe she ate too much, whatever, then you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't know she was pregnant. Okay. If she thinks that she is pregnant when she is not pregnant, there is an offense of wrongdoing. Right, because you thought you were doing something wrong, even though you weren't. If she is in doubt as to whether she is not pregnant, there is an offense of wrongdoing. So if you're suspicious and you ordain her anyway, then that's a wrongdoing, but not an offense of expiation. If she thinks that she is not pregnant when she is not pregnant, there is no offense, obviously, but it's stated, so there it is. There is no offense if she ordains a pregnant woman thinking that she is not pregnant. If she ordains a woman who is not pregnant thinking that she is not pregnant, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Okay. Next rule. Expiation, Pācittiya 62. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, nuns ordained a woman giving suck. Okay, so just right away, I'm 100% certain that this means that she is lactating. And in the 1930s, people were more innocent, as exemplified in the appendix of the first rule, where it said that no Western person could hear these words that, of course, children hear on TV now if they click, yes, I'm an adult, right? Okay, I'll just keep reading, just pretend that this is fine. She walked for alms. People spoke thus, quote, give alms food for the lady. The lady has a companion. End quote. The people, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can nuns, 3 dots, see 61, instead of pregnant woman, read woman giving suck, and parentheses, 3 dots, quote, 3 dots, this rule of training, whatever nun should ordain a woman giving suck, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. Whatever means 3 dots, nun means 3 dots. Woman giving suck means she is a mother or a foster mother, right? Because it's possible to. Should ordain means 3 dots. Parentheses, 61 read, if she thinks that she is a woman giving suck when she is a woman giving suck, if she thinks that she is not a woman giving suck, etc. Miss Horner didn't want to translate that, and I understand. I have compassion for Miss Horner. And parentheses, 3 dots, if she is the first wrongdoer. So that's rule 62. It's burned into our brains. What's Pācittiya 62 for nuns? Right, that one. Let's move on. Okay. Expiation, Pācittiya 63. Now, at that time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now, at that time, nuns ordained a probationer who had not trained for 2 years in the 6 rules. And those who saw the previous episode now know what this is referring to. I had forgotten until I did the editing, or Editor Edward did the editing. These were ignorant, inexperienced. They did not know what was allowable or what was not allowable. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns ordain a probationer who has not trained for 2 years in the 6 rules? End quote, 3 dots. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns 3 dots in the 6 rules? End quote. Quote, it is true, Lord, end quote, the Enlightened One. The Lord rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can these nuns ordain 3 dots in the 6 rules? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, end parentheses, pleased, 3 dots, end quote. And having rebuked them, having given reasoned talk, he addressed the monks, saying, quote, I allow you, monks, to give a probationer the agreement as to training for 2 years in the 6 rules. And thus, monks, should it be given, that probationer, having approached the order, having arranged her upper robe over one shoulder, having honored the feet of the nuns, having sat down on her haunches, having saluted with joined palms, should speak thus, quote within quotes, ladies, I, so-and-so, a probationer under the lady so-and-so, request the order for the agreement as to training for 2 years in the 6 rules, end quote within quotes. And a second time it should be requested, 3 dots, all that same stuff again. And a third time it should be requested. The order should be informed by an experienced, competent nun, saying, quote within quotes, ladies, let the order listen to me. This, parentheses, woman, end parentheses, so-and-so, a probationer under the lady so-and-so, requests the order for the agreement as to training for 2 years in the 6 rules. If it seems right to the order, let the order give the probationer so-and-so the agreement as to training for 2 years in the 6 rules. This is the motion. Ladies, let the order listen to me. This, parentheses, woman, end parentheses, so-and-so, 3 dots, requests, 3 dots, for 2 years in the 6 rules. If the giving to the probationer so-and-so of the agreement as to training for 2 years in the 6 rules is pleasing to the ladies, let them be silent. If it is not pleasing, they should speak. The agreement as to training for 2 years in the 6 rules is given to the probationer so-and-so, and it is right, 3 dots. So do I understand this, end quote within quotes, end quote. That probationer should be told, quote, speak thus, quote within quotes, I undertake for 2 years not to transgress the resolution of abstinence from onslaught on creatures. I undertake, 3 dots, abstinence from taking what is not given, 3 dots, abstinence from unchastity, 3 dots, abstinence from lying, 3 dots, abstinence from occasions for sloth, parentheses, arising from, end parentheses, fermented liquor and spirits and strong drink. I undertake for 2 years not to transgress the resolution of abstinence from eating at the wrong time. End quote within quotes, end quote. So there's the oath. Okay. Then the Lord, having rebuked these nuns in many a figure for their weakness in maintaining themselves, 3 dots, quote, 3 dots, and thus, monks, let the nuns set forth this rule of training. Whatever nun should ordain a probationer who has not trained for 2 years in the 6 rules, there is an offense of expiation. End quote. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. 2 years means 2 years. Has not trained means either the training is not given or the training is given, parentheses, but, and parentheses, is interrupted. Should ordain means 3 dots, parentheses, 61, and, oh right, that definition was given in the previous, or a few rules ago, and parentheses, 3 dots. And an offensive wrongdoing for the group and for the woman teacher. If she thinks that it is a legally valid act when it is a legally valid act, parentheses, and parentheses, ordains her, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether it is a legally valid act, 3 dots. If she thinks that it is not a legally valid act when it is a legally valid act, 3 dots, offense of expiation. If she thinks that it is a legally valid act when it is not a legally valid act, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she is in doubt as to whether it is not a legally valid act, 3 dots. If she thinks that it is not a legally valid act when it is not a legally valid act, there is an offense of wrongdoing. There is no offense if she ordains a probationer who has trained for 2 years in the 6 rules, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. I'm going to close there for today, I do look forward to finishing all 6 of these books and getting to the teachings of Lord Buddha. But again, as I said, I don't want to skip them. And I hope that you learned something today. And I can definitely relate with the emotional state of the howling dogs outside as I read and contemplate some of these subjects and ideas. And I hope that you are doing well. For anyone who's watching from Sikkim, I hope that you and everyone you know and love, friends and family, are safe from the flooding. And I will go ahead and do the usual closing prayer. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us, and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.